In 6:35, I call the Halifax Planning Board into session, August 20th, 2019, 6:35. On the agenda, we have discussion and write-up of bylaw changes for the special town meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as read?
Motion to approve the agenda.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll just do discussion on what we have for changes. I think we got through all of theirs last time, right?
I think we did. We don't need to make a formal vote to recommend or not recommend at this point, right? We revisit those at the public hearing next time too?
Yeah. This is just for
Take it
us
out the
to
public
discuss
notice.
so that we can get them in, and then there'll be full discussion at the hearing.
Yep.
So, we wanna start with, what was this change here? It's already in there, right?
I
think it's in there like that.
67.4. Let's take a look. No, that was fine. I think that was, nothing changed there. I don't know what was,
You just highlighted it,
yeah, I don't know.
so that's not a change.
Not a change on the first page. 167.4. It's a clerical thing, I think. The distinction between multifamily developments and the uses. I think that's just a clarification that the special permit by the ZBA is for the use only, not for the actual development.
167 D2.
Right now, it reads multifamily development allowable by special permit from the zoning board of appeals in the A, R, B, and C districts. I think it's kind of implied that they're allowing the use, but perhaps it could be more clear.
So add in use is, that's what this is.
Yeah, because the previous one even talks about agricultural uses, and some of the other sections talk about the uses in specific. This one's just a little more vague in terms of what it's referring to. That could be unnecessary, but
No, I think if it clarifies it a little better, that's better. So that one is 167.7. Sixty-seven,
me too.
7D. Is this C? Table of use is C, right? Okay. So we're gonna add
I could also send you the Word version of this after we're done through it, which is summarized instead of having to retype it all.
Yeah, I just wanted to take some notes so we're
Okay.
following
Sure.
what we discuss and stuff.
So instead of allowable, its use is by special permit?
Multifamily development.
Oh, use is allowable, sorry.
Use is allowable. Okay.
Yeah, because I think without that, it could be viewed as the CBA is giving the permit for the actual multifamily development.
Exactly. Okay, and then we go to 167.
So it's 2A now. So it's the next page.
To A. I really have an issue about taking it off of individual lots.
Me too.
I mean, one of the reasons is, you take a single-family home, right? They're taxed on that lot, and an average lot in this town is $150,000 in value.
The lot and the value of the house.
Just the lot. Just the lot is valued at $150,000.
All right, but you're taxed on both.
No, yeah, but I'm just talking, if we're just talking the lot.
Sure.
So, if you're gonna put more than one unit on a lot, that lot value doesn't change.
Does it not?
No,
If you put a duplex on a lot, then
it doesn't change the value of the lot, because we're talking about the value of the land.
okay.
So, let's say that you put 3 units on that one lot. They're already getting a tax break on those units versus a single-family home that has to pay on the 150. All right, now, if you take and you put 14 units on one lot, the lot's 150,000.
That's not a hard cost for a lot, right? Isn't it tied to the acreage and some other things?
Yeah, it is, but I can prove to you that so that's gonna go in at 2. $167, 12A, 3. What did you have? Add?
Add prior to development at the end. Right, because sequentially, how would you do this theoretically? You go to the zoning board first to get your use permit, but you can't get your use permit for lots that don't exist, right? Or could you?
Well, I mean, it can be done in conjunction. If you come in and lay the thing out, and you bring us a site plan, and we're looking through the site plan, and, okay, the site plan looks fine, now go for a use permit. They can give the use permit contingent on us signing the site plan off. That's why I was saying we need to get something going with
Yep.
the other boards so that there's some continuity.
Yes.
And
I
just
agree.
lay it out. I mean, I think you can apply, you gotta have the use permit, so you gotta have plans to show them what you're gonna do to get the use permit. So it makes sense to start the site plan here.
Mhm.
They can bring the site plan over to them while we're still looking at it.
So but we have to do a subdivision first, right? Or maybe not first. It's two totally separate things.
I think the process would be the site plan.
Assuming the
This is
subdivision
like,
goes through.
this is the conceptual.
Yeah, that's what I was
Right.
just gonna say, a conceptual plan showing.
The site plan
everything.
shows what you're gonna do.
Yep.
Okay, now you know that this is what you're proposing. In order to do that, you're gonna have to do a subdivision. So this plan is actually gonna show everything on the site plan, right? and then you come back and get your subdivision. And we sign off the site plan contingent on you getting the subdivision plan signed off. They give you a permit for the use based on the,
Yeah, because on your subdivision,
Subdivision.
you're not showing any of the driveways or any other stuff, you're just showing the road.
but I mean, I think that would be, and then, you know, they can file with conservation at the same time if they need that.
Okay.
And that's why I was saying, we need a folder that follows it along. So, you know, if we're waiting for information on the site plan, they can see what we're waiting for. They get to take a look at it, they put in what they want,
Yep.
and the whole thing can move through.
And you could run them concurrently, right? There's no
Yeah.
reason you couldn't run a subdivision plan and a site plan review at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
And they have their choice if they want to give us a preliminary or they want to give us a definitive on the subdivision.
Okay.
Okay. So that was, prior to development was 3. And then 5. 5 we were still working on, right?
Sort of the table, right? So we started with the table. Do you want to change any of the notations in the table saying 75 feet for multifamily dwellings, 100 feet between multifamily buildings?
Change the developments to buildings?
Yeah, or even buildings or dwellings, even
Change it to
buildings, I guess.
buildings.
Even though buildings aren't a defined term.
And then we need to put in this section, requirements for the lot.
Yeah. Or you want to go through 5 still?
Yep. Yeah, because that's talking about that development, right?
So at least through the first sentence, where the minimum front yard instead of setback shall be 75 feet. The minimum rear yard shall be 100 feet, and the minimum yeah, I was gonna say. And there's some weird typos there in the version that I think is typed up there in front of you. And between, you still want it to be 100 feet between buildings? It just seems kind of
I don't think
excessive
it
to
needs
me.
to be, but seems like that could be cut down.
I imagine they could also get zoning relief for these requirements, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it makes more sense to put it in there that you can build it rather than try to have to.
So what would you make it be, right? Because theoretically, buildings can't be closer than
60.
anyhow, right?
Well, then it would at least have to be that in my eyes.
Go
Yeah.
75 feet.
Sure.
Maybe a little bit
Nice.
more, but not.
An extra 7.5 feet, sure.
I mean, if they had to fight a fire in between, it seems like that. You know, there's a parcel out there that has a development that's proposed on it
Yeah.
that has a value of 450,000.
Okay.
And if they were on separate lots, it would be a $900,000 value.
Because it's 6 lots. Okay.
So, I mean, we're talking about giving a break for multifamily, but I think we're giving a huge offset break because, you know, at $8,000 a kid to go to school, those people can put just as many kids in as, you know, so now you have 12 families sending kids in, and the value is half of what it would be if they're single-family homes.
I get it from a generality, but you know what that ratio is? If you had a 10-acre piece of property, do you know what that tax is on just that piece of land versus 9 1-acre pieces of property?
Well, I can tell you on one that's 12 acres,
Yeah.
there's a value of $450,000.
Okay. As an undeveloped, unpermitted single piece of property.
No. As the property for the development that's getting 12 units.
Okay. So the single
So
piece
so
of
the
property.
land is land.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I happen to have a buildable lot in town. I get billed, there's nothing on it, I get billed $150,000 value on that. I have to pay taxes on that.
Sure.
So now you go over here and you've got 12 acres and you say, there's gonna be 12 units there, but it's only $450,000 in value.
After development?
It doesn't matter whether it's after or before. I have a lot that's 150,000 with no development on it. So the cost of the land is the same before and after.
I don't know that that's true.
Well,
I have a lot of clients that have their land that is 40,000 square feet or more listed as a lot more taxes than somebody else's. It happens a lot. And they have to prove that it's unbuildable in order for it to go back down.
Right. So what is developable is taxed at a higher rate.
But if it's part of their
No, that's
lot-
saying you cannot build on it.
Right, so you get a tax break when you cannot build a larger subdivision on it.
No, when you can't build on that land at all. So you're getting assessed as a buildable lot.
Correct.
The only way that changes is if you prove it's not a buildable lot. That doesn't mean you can make it that later. It's not buildable, period.
Yeah, no.
But if
I
it's
get it.
buildable,
You're just
it's
saying you're losing
150.
value in tax value. What that number is specifically, and who knows?
So a lot of people don't have the money or the know-how to, like, say they have a house on 3 acres or
Yeah.
5, something like that. They have a couple. Their land is worth more because they're assessing it as buildable lots, and then they have to hire somebody to prove that it is not buildable. So it's like being guilty before they bought it all as one, and then all of a sudden.
I get it. And you know, taxable value versus sellable value and development potential. Whether you've got a 50-acre piece of property and it's a single lot, you get taxed at what the current value is. You put a 30-unit subdivision on it, all of a sudden it's worth a lot more, and the land's worth a lot more, and it's going to be taxed more after it's subdivided.
What about these people before it is?
I don't think you're taxed on what the potential for the development
Yes, you are.
would be for Gordon's plan.
That's what we're saying.
You are. That's how we're taxed right now. Land use is taxed on what it could be.
So if you have a 10-acre piece of property, you were just telling me that it wasn't taxed at 10 times
It
150.
depends on the frontage.
Right.
That's exactly what my clients end up with, is street frontage, and then they have 40,000 square feet, and maybe it's wet as a swamp, but they have to prove that in order to drop
But
because of their frontage.
we're back to a different argument. It's kind of the same topic, but it's a different argument, right? So that's proving it's undevelopable versus the tax difference of individual lots versus one large lot. I think that's two different things.
Yeah. it
But
is.
I think,
Well, I mean, what I'm getting at is, yeah, that they're getting taxed as a buildable lot. That's fine. And everybody else is getting taxed on that, okay? But when you start putting buildings out there and you're not billed for having a lot for each one of those buildings, then you're getting a break. And I think it's an unfair break. Because if you're allowing people to do multifamily, they are getting a break, even if they put it on a single lot.
Yeah, I think in concept, in theory, you're right there. And the same thing applies to commercial developments. You have a condominium strip mall, you know, the land for that is taxed at the same rate as the residential, even though you have a bunch of different commercial properties on there. If you carved it up into 4 different commercial buildings instead of one long strip mall, then, you know, that would obviously be taxed at a different rate too. So, I think it's just a general argument. I don't disagree.
I mean, that's,
Is that the only reason for not wanting to carve up into individual lots, is for the loss in potential loss in tax revenue?
no, that's not the only reason. I just think that, you know, our town is set up 1 building per lot, and I don't see any reason why somebody can't meet that. I don't think it's putting a hardship on a developer to maintain that.
I think it's unnecessary, and I haven't seen it in a lot of other jurisdictions where I've been through the zoning code. That's not typical of how a lot of other municipalities lay out the multifamily ordinances. Not to say it's right or wrong, it's just
What municipalities are you speaking of?
Quincy, Braintree, Weymouth.
Cities.
Yeah.
So the ordinance is different where this is a town, and it was, bylaws were set by people to remain a town, so like the reason why there's a 40,000 square foot lot need with 150 feet of frontage is because that's what it says in black and white in this. And like, so unless the town, every resident in town, so I just believe that unless 3/4, I would think that this should be a vote. It's such a major change that would be a ballot vote, and I'd make sure that everybody in the town knew that it was going to happen, because then if we allow, gosh, isn't it like 110 feet for the fire department to get through, isn't it? Or is it half of that? Isn't it like 60 with 30 and 30 that they require to get through?
For like a turnaround?
For,
The roads? So
yeah, but I'm saying in between the buildings.
To walk somebody back there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're gonna drive the truck around there, but,
Oh, alright.
you know, they had a fire in one, it should be more. So, 75.
Do you want to change it, or you want to just leave it?
Go down to 75?
So
Is that
then,
on this one?
it's gonna go on the table and there.
This is 10.
The wording is just weird in that subsection. Amy, do you have any thoughts on that 75 feet versus 100?
No, I agree with that. I think it would have to be 60 at least, and I think 75 sounds good.
Okay, so the language right now reads minimum front yard shall be 75 feet, minimum rear yard shall be 100 feet.
And it should be at least 75 feet.
Yes, but in terms of the way the sentence is written here, right? So if we're talking about front yard, rear yard, there is no side yard requirement, and should we say and a minimum of 70 feet between any two buildings.
Yeah.
Shall be provided between any two buildings.
Yeah.
We also then say, because right now it also says, in addition, the required 30-foot minimum side yard between the development and adjacent properties shall be maintained as a vegetated buffer area free of parking or any structures. Should we say, instead of the required 30-foot side yard, should we say a required 30-foot buffer between the development and adjacent properties shall be maintained? Meaning it would include essentially just a ring around the whole entire development piece of property instead of,
Well, that's what it has now, right?
no, now it's just a side yard. So to the point I made last time, right? If you had a big
Well, it
rear
says-
yard, you would be able to,
It says the required 30-foot minimum side yard between the development and adjacent properties shall be maintained as a vegetated buffer area.
I guess my point being is it doesn't apply to the rear yard. It's just talking about side yards for whatever reason. So if you happen to back up against somebody else,
Yeah. So, yeah,
Well,
of the entire property?
yeah, you can say a minimum 30-foot.
but isn't there a backyard limitation?
But it doesn't have the buffer.
You could clear cut right your property line if you wanted to.
So what this will do is maintain that at least it's a 30-foot all the way around.
I like that.
Minimum 30-foot vegetated buffer free of parking
Or any structures.
or any structures.
Period.
Shall be provided between the development and adjacent properties.
Yep.
You want to say an undisturbed, a minimum 30-foot undisturbed vegetated buffer?
Yeah.
And this is all going along with everything being on their own lots still.
Correct. And I don't think that needs to be for the development, for each individual lot. I think that
It says
just needs
for
to be
the
for the
development.
development as a whole.
Yep.
And then I think it's appropriate to reaffirm that the lot has to have frontage on a public way. Well, I guess there's a question, right? So now, do you even have to say that? Should you say each development lot shall maintain provide the required frontage? Or
Each lot for a multifamily building, multifamily.
No lots for multifamilies, why should a single family not build a detached 2-car garage on theirs when somebody else can build major buildings all over an acre, and we have these setbacks that we can't even put a detached 2-car garage?
I think you could, right? It's just how big
No,
the
you
lot
can't.
is, right?
Well, not on some of them, but like say for instance, you go into some of the grandfathered lots, right? The grandfathered lots don't have enough side or anything, but we're going to allow a multifamily to build all over an acre and not pay attention to any of that when you're going to make a single family pay attention to their setbacks.
I
It
think
doesn't-
people follow the ordinance is what it comes down to it. I don't think I'm cherry picking versus small lots versus big lots or anything
Well,
like that.
It's just for an example. Like why should somebody that has a smaller lot not be able to use more of it? Where now that we're allowing multiple buildings go on one lot.
I think it's two totally different arguments. If you
I
want to
don't
build
think so.
within a foot of your neighbor's property line, that's a different argument than whether or not a building needs to be on its own lot versus not.
Why?
Because a multifamily one
If I
has
don't
its own
need a lot, why do
separation
I have to
setbacks
need to
anyway.
pay attention to the lot? If you allow one person not to pay attention to what their lot is so that they can get in what they want to, why should we listen to any of the bylaws
I'm
either?
not saying ignore it. I'm saying let's take a look at potentially changing it. So I'm not saying subvert the regulations. I'm saying I don't believe it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm not attacking your view, but I'm trying to show you the view of like a single family that has these setbacks. How can we allow a multifamily dwelling not have all of these different rules that have been set forth in this town?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would argue that you can't build those small lots right now anyway. If you want to do a subdivision with a tenth of an
But
acre
even
lots.
if you have
Oh,
an
you can't.
acre, you can't build a barn in front of your house. You can't build a garage in front of your house. You can't do all these things. So what does it do to those bylaws when we now allow something without enough frontage, or even if it
You know,
did
he's
have-
not saying not without enough,
I'm
without
saying-
frontage, no.
Yeah, my
I
thing
mean,
is just the lot line thing. It seems like it's unnecessary and doesn't provide any value. And I get your argument on the lost revenue potentially from the tax standpoint. You know, the magnitude of that in the whole entire town. I don't know how much that would necessarily impact it all that much.
it would when we have to build new schools to uphold the new children that would be in. And
But I guess the larger point is to your point, you're going to build the same density regardless of whether these things are on lots or if they're on a public right of way or if it's just on one bigger lot. I'm not saying let's change the density or change the amount of units that would be able to be developed on a piece of property.
oh, see, I'm hearing that, and I didn't like that.
No,
No,
mine is
no.
all the same stuff. The only difference is you don't have to dedicate a public right of way and put these buildings on legal lots. You'd still be able to put 10 units on 10 acres and just on one larger piece of property with more of a like a development layout as opposed to a subdivision layout. So it'd be more, you know, you do your parking in front of your buildings if you wanted to. You could have common spaces, areas. You could put in a little playground, whatever have you. It wouldn't necessarily need to be a subdivision road with clusters of 3-unit buildings along the subdivision roadway.
So what does that building look like to you? Because I can't picture it.
It's less than 2.5 stories tall. It would probably look like something that you have on, what is it, Twin Lakes up there, something like that. Because that you cannot do with our current zoning regulations.
Yes.
Twin Lakes,
Yeah,
unless you put them on separate lots.
yeah. And
You
then
wouldn't
got
have
those
the
buildings are
density.
closer than 100 feet
Right.
apart.
That's right.
There's all kinds of other things that this zoning ordinance or bylaw would not allow. You would need relief from that. And the
You
town
you
would
couldn't
then
have it
use-
look like what it is down there. You could still do it. It couldn't look like what it is.
It could not look like what it is. Correct. Yeah, and the town would then be responsible for maintaining all the roads, doing all the infrastructure repairs, dealing with the stormwater and all that.
Yeah, but you
So
know
it's
something?
cost.
Yeah, there's cost to it, but the town gets reimbursed for doing the road work. I mean, that's how, you know, you
Not
get chapter
really.
90.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be surprised.
Well, right now we need so much road work. It's crazy. Another water main break found on Lincoln Street, and literally, if you like, leaf blow the road, it's rolling. It's all separating and rolling.
Yeah.
And that's not even just that road. So like there's major work that needs to be done to the roads that we have already.
Yeah, and these subdivision
Yeah, but I
roads,
mean, they're still gonna, no matter what that is, they're gonna deteriorate.
and we've seen it, there's subdivision roads where, you know, we did the lot in lieu of a bond, and now there's people living on them. The town has to maintain this half-built roadway that's falling apart, and
Sad.
may or may not ever get fixed, depending on, you know, who steps up to take care of it, so. That's got its own issues too, when you're building subdivisions.
Yeah, I like when they bond the lot instead of hold a lot back.
Well, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah. So, anyway, if you don't want to change the lot part of it, and we're not gonna get support for that, then let's look at the other things.
Okay. All right, the next one would be B. So the complete,
So I guess even getting back to A though, would you think it would be inappropriate to just refer to the more detailed section of 167.12 and then put that lot requirement under that section?
I think 167,
Because this subsection
Seven?
talks about uses. I don't know why we're getting into like density and dimensional regulation.
the next one is density, right? Isn't 12 density?
12 talks about all the requirements of a multifamily development.
I think that's where the lot needs to go in.
Yeah, no, I agree, which is what I was trying to do here in essentially the same manner. If you want to put some language and move that language to 12, then
Was it 167,
12.
12.
Yeah.
12? Yeah, because 10 starts with the density, and I think you had that in there too. But do you want
Yeah,
to,
maybe
you want to
later.
continue down here
Well, would you have any issue with just referring to 167.12
for,
for all these dimensional things as it relates to having the lot be a requirement?
that'd be fine.
I think that's at least more clear.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily think that it,
I mean,
Helps
at
the
least we
end
should point people in the direction of where the regulation is.
yeah. So that would have mattered if it was a scenario where you only had no lot lines, internal lot lines, right? In my scenario, where you'd have to have at least 150 feet of frontage to have a development, a buildable parcel.
Well,
And now you only need 110, right? Because you built subdivision roadway on 110 to get back into your site.
yeah, because you don't have a legal buildable lot at that point.
So sequentially, to be able to do a multifamily development, does your original 10-acre piece of property need to have the required frontage? I would argue no.
I would argue the stricter of the law
Well,
provides.
It's
And
not
that it says 150 feet of frontage.
to build a single lot, to build a house on that parcel as is.
but what you're
Yeah.
saying is to put the road in, you need 110.
Correct.
So do we need to clarify that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Because, right, because theoretically, you could have a piece of property that's 10 acres that has less than 150 feet of frontage, which you couldn't even develop as a single family.
Right.
Right.
But you
Unless it was
could,
a retreat lot.
but then you would have to build a subdivision to build a roadway back there, which you could normally do. So then the only question is, do you need that 10-acre piece of property just for shits and giggles to have 150 feet of frontage? Pardon my French. I don't think you would need to, right? But does that need to be clarified?
Ask the question again.
Do you think it should be required that you have to have 150 feet of frontage on your 10-acre parcel to do a multifamily development, even if you're going to subdivide it in accordance with all the basic requirements.
You mean off of a public way?
Correct.
Uh-huh.
But to do a subdivision, you don't need to. You don't need to have 150 feet.
Oh, to do a street, you need 60 and 30 on each side, making 110, which
Or yeah, or is it 25? Whatever the number
30
is.
and
I think.
30.
Well, if you did the buffer zone all the way around it, you'd have to have 30 on either side,
Uh-huh.
50 for the roadway,
Yeah.
which would be 110.
Yeah. So you gotta do that. Well, I guess you gotta have your sidewalks and yeah.
Well, I mean, the 50 feet
Yeah.
fit everything. So I would say that, I mean, you could put it in there that you must have a minimum of 110 if you're gonna put the road in. If you're gonna,
That's kind of implied, right? You need to be able to have that to do a subdivision, right?
well, I mean, in order to meet the requirements of this, because you got a 30-foot buffer, you gotta have a 30-foot buffer on either side of the road. The road's a structure.
But the road won't be a lot.
No, but it'll be a structure. So it's saying 30-foot buffer free from any parking or structure for that buffer. And then it's a 50-foot
Otherwise,
right away for the road. So that would clarify it.
So what if you want to do like your detention ponds and stuff right along the entry? You can't, right? So now all of a sudden you're gonna have a super wide entry. Or if you can't grade it, you can't replant it, you can't do anything there. Maybe take out the word undisturbed from that 30-foot buffer.
I don't know that somebody's gonna want a detention basin up against their lot line.
No, but like a lot of roadways, right? A lot of these subdivisions, you got a road that goes back there, and the low point is at the connection to the public roadway. You're gonna put your stormwater stuff at the front, and you're clearing out like that whole path there for sight lines and all that kind of stuff to make it function better. And then to tack on 30 feet on top of your limit of work, which might go out past your public right-of-way dedication. Like all of a sudden now it's becoming
Well,
much wider.
I mean, if you had 150 feet to come in, then maybe you know, you could do that too. I don't know. You know, we're talking about always trying to squeeze something into the tightest area. I mean, that's not necessarily.
No, but to do a subdivision, you necessarily need to have 30 feet of the roadway. And most people aren't worried about what's happening at the first 30 feet where you tie into the road, right? Because nobody's house is up there.
Right.
unless you're abutting somebody.
But your house is going to be tucked back a little bit anyway, right? So, and you want to clear the corners to be able to make your sight
See.
lines work at the junction with the street.
And I think it has to have the required amount of frontage to have a street, no matter what.
Yes, meaning the 110 or 120 feet or whatever it is.
Yeah. I would say if we put in there, you need 110 feet.
Well, at that point, you might as well be silent on it, right?
What did you say?
At
Silent.
that point, we might as well be silent to the point, right? Or,
Well, I mean, if we spell it out that that's what you need, then, you know, anybody asks, you got a 30-foot buffer on both sides and 50 foot for the road. So, you know,
I
if you're
thought it
gonna
was
come in
already
with something.
here. You mean add it to this section?
correct, because the frontage discussion isn't in there.
Except for when you go to the stricter of the law, it's there.
But before it was unclear if you needed to have the buildings on the lots. And if you didn't, then I think the argument was, well, it doesn't say anywhere that I need to have 150 feet of frontage.
No, I thought it did say that you had to have it on individual lots, and I thought that it
Well,
did say.
That's
It
what
did, but it
you're
was
kind of doing on
unclear.
this one, right?
Yeah.
Only unclear if you want to play a game and act like a kid and be like, no, you don't have to have a cookie, and
Unclear to the point that it went to court, but yeah. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do something there.
On 10, but we could maybe get it in on, Do you think we added to
Yeah,
that?
where did that go? That's on 10?
Yeah, that was,
No, I lost it.
so you're saying leave in,
So it would read that it says it's required that any multifamily development proposed hereunder shall conform with the requirements of section 16712. And then if you want to put something about each one shall be located on a single lot in that section,
well, that was A.
then I think that would make more sense to put it there.
Leaving that it should be on one lot?
I think it would make sense to just have all those requirements be in the next section. If you want to say that it should be on a single lot, then let's not change it.
Not change this and just put it on the other?
Right, so that's what I'm trying to do, is try to clarify, because I think it says it in like 3 or 4 different locations in the bylaw that like units need to be developed on a single lot. I think it says it somewhere else.
Yeah, on 10. Except here and thereafter provided,
Yeah,
which is confusing.
correct. So I think it would make sense to clarify it at least in that specific section if you want to say that all multifamily dwellings must be in that one.
So,
Yeah, so I was going to say they don't need to be, but if you want to reaffirm there,
so except here and after provided, multifamily dwellings and buildings must be constructed on a single lot?
sure,
Right,
if that's what you wanted to say.
I see. It must be constructed on,
Remember, we were going to change that also, right? Last week talked about putting a period after word requirements.
Yeah.
And then starting a new one saying no more than one dwelling shall be built upon any single lot except as herein provided. Right, and I think that clarified that.
multifamily dwellings and buildings must be constructed on individual lots?
It should say then each because this says
Okay.
multiple buildings and dwellings. So I was trying to get at the point that I was making, which is counter to your
Oh,
point.
okay, yeah.
So it should
Multiple.
say each, if you want to say that, it should say each multifamily dwelling and building. We could just even say each dwelling or building.
In a multifamily development.
I should say each building, right? Because you could do multiple dwellings in a building.
Correct.
So it should say each building must be constructed on a single lot for multifamily developments. You're saying on an individual lot?
Yeah. So each dwelling shall be built upon a single lot, except that herein provided multifamily dwellings each building.
Because what they're saying, the hearing provided allows you to do duplexes and in-laws on a single lot.
Right.
So you have to leave that in. And then if you just want to bang home the point that the multifamily ones have to be on their own individual lots, you could just say each building must be constructed on an individual lot for multifamily developments in accordance with section 167(12)A.
Okay.
Right? Is
Yep.
that what you want to say?
Yep, that sounds good.
So what about all the bylaws that say things like you need to have your own driveway, no common drive, and all of that? Does that not
Those-
continue to apply for multifamily?
That's a good question.
Because if you can't have a common driveway, and you can't have,
Two driveways to a single building, right? Off a public right of way, which is what would be happening.
You can have, you can only have one driveway for each
Building,
building.
which doesn't allow for multiple garages on a townhome.
Doesn't allow for which?
Let's say you have a duplex, 2 units side by side. You have garages in each one. You need to get into the garage, so you're putting in 2 driveways.
Yeah, it doesn't say you can't have 2 driveways. You can't have shared driveways.
It would be a shared driveway of. Well, let's look at the definition, right? Because then could somebody on a retreat lot put 2 side by side driveways on a
That-
common piece of property?
That's why it's there. And it also says that you can't have 2 accesses for the estate lots side by side.
Say, shared.
yeah, other towns in this area had common driveways back in the 80s, and they're always a problem. It's like they're happy and wonderful when they have certain neighbors, and then not when they don't. It's bad.
So we don't have a requirement that talks about needing to have.
I just read it, sorry.
Where's that?
I'll find it again. I'll find it again.
For the driveways?
Which one?
I think the subsections are all jacked up. That's supposed to be
Oh, really?
12. That's actually the next page after
Yeah,
that.
it-
That's, the
it has,
continua- that's the continuation.
It must have been too long, and then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so do you want to make it 110 then, just for clarity's sake?
Well, no, I think if we put it in 12, that's what we're talking about,
Yeah,
the
that's-
table of densities for
That's where that's
regulations for
supposed to be.
this.
That actually is in 10 when you look at the Word document the way it's written out. In 12.
So the minimum
that
parcel
is twelve.
size shall be 10 acres with
That's literally just the next
a
section.
minimum, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Of
that's right.
110 street frontage, right?
Yes.
Something to that jazz.
Yeah, so just reaffirming the other thing too, right? So I think I had in there, the lot shall have frontage on a public way and shall provide a maximum lot coverage of 25%, which is what the basic zoning requirement is. Are we talking about that percentage now in terms of the lot, not including the roadway? Or does the roadway count against that number?
I think it's not including the
I
road.
don't think it's in there right now, right?
It's not. You want to just leave it out?
But the roadway isn't part of the lot technically, so it wouldn't be part of it, right?
But it would be part of a multifamily development.
Well, I think we get a requirement of 10 acres in there,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
So as long as each individual lot is less than 25%, you're okay with that?
I think so.
Okay. So then we could say,
I mean, at that point, aren't you are getting an advantage, right? If you're not counting the roadway out of there, you start with a 10-acre parcel, and you can do the number of units up to what you have for upland, and you can subdivide it, and you do legal lots in there. in essence, getting more density in that 10 acres.
No, because each, well, yeah, I guess
If you're not
theoretically
gonna
you
count the
could.
roadway.
Yeah, you're not counting the roadway. But each lot, yeah, because you could do 2 units on each 40,000 square foot lot,
Well, you'd be doing 3.
or as many as you want, yeah. For the multifamily development of duplexes, you do a development of 4 duplexes, that's a multifamily development. Right?
I don't think the duplexes come under the multifamily development now, do they?
Let's take a look again. Multifamily development. A development of, okay, 3 or more dwelling units on a single lot of land under one ownership.
So it wouldn't include duplexes. Right?
So we might need to clarify the definition of that, too.
Yeah, because a multifamily development can be on, can result in multiple lots. Yeah, because right now that's written, right? If you do a development subdivision of 2 duplexes, you would have 4 development units. And it would have been, now at that point, you're just doing subdivision. So I guess, right, so is the intent, if you wanted to do a subdivision of duplexes, would you consider that falling under the multifamily guidelines?
We've had them before where they've come in and they've done a regular subdivision and then gone back and gotten special permits for duplexes.
Okay. Which is a
Wait.
lot more dense than a traditional multifamily development. Twice the density.
Where was that?
Heron Road.
Is that what the process is? You need a special permit for duplexes?
No, it's allowed by special permit, period.
Okay.
So. Goes under the use.
Jesus, this thing just never ends. Round and round we go, huh?
This reminds me of doing the master plan. Took us years to get that done.
Okay, so we were going to change it to say development of 3 or more dwelling units on a single lot of land under one ownership of not less than 10 acres in size in accordance with section 16712A. So we were just going to reference that standard.
Ready to sign up?
I'm fine with that. You want to just move on? I'm gonna have to call it quits here soon. Your head's starting to hurt. Okay, there we go. So it's section 16710L. There's access to all lots.
Yes, that's where it is. Yeah.
Shall only be through or across its legal frontage. No common driveways are allowed unless otherwise provided for within this chapter. And so I guess you could have 2 driveways, right?
Yeah, you can have 2.
But if for whatever
But-
reason you
But
have
if they
like
were all on the same lot, right,
Yep.
then it's not a common driveway, it's to that building.
Correct, unless the wording would have said to each dwelling unit or something like that instead of building. There's no definition, so.
Yeah.
So what if you have, let's say, you create one of these and you have almost got like a little retreat lot type thing going on. And you have a long, skinny driveway to get to the back.
You'd have to enter through the frontage.
But would you have to have, let's say it's a 6-unit building. Would you have to have 6 side-by-side
No.
driveways?
No, if they're all in the same building,
Okay.
it's the access to the building.
We don't have that defined anywhere in terms of what is a common driveway.
I mean, common driveway is typically a driveway that accesses 2 different properties.
Well, if it becomes a parking lot, do we have to get into the parking lot section again and start talking about all of those things that, you know what I mean?
Well, parking's covered in here. You're gonna have 2.5 spaces for each unit.
It's probably fine, right? But do we want to define what a common driveway is? Or is there a generally accepted definition somewhere? Do we care that much? I could take it or leave it. There's going to be a million other things that we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, we can kind of take a look at that at another time.
Okay. Moving on.
I mean,
Here, a definition from uslegal.com. A shared driveway is generally a driveway jointly owned by the owners of the properties it gives access to. So in this way,
properties.
but jointly owned, right? So let's say you've got in this individual lot, each one of these lots, you're gonna have a little mini condo association, right? Because the 4 people in this building that have units are gonna
That
have,
it jointly owned?
yeah, it's a driveway jointly owned by the owners of the properties it gives access to. Details of the way in which it is owned, i.e. owned in common or with reciprocal rights, are shown on the deeds. So again, that's just one definition.
So that would be like an easement that's recorded and they both own it.
Or it could be on a townhome piece of property where the 5 townhome owners all jointly are required to own and maintain that driveway that gets to their building.
It says property easement on a shared driveway under real estate law. A common type of property easement is when 2 neighboring properties have a shared driveway. Typically, each owner owns part of the driveway and has the legal right to use the entire driveway to drive their cars to and from the garages or parking areas at the rear of the properties.
Okay. So you would argue that there has to be some sort of easement involved?
Well, I mean, it's kind of implied that
Yeah, that's fine.
that you would have to
I'm not gonna
have
beat
some
this
kind
into
of
death.
legal use of it, right?
In a townhome, all 5 people are responsible for all the aspects of the site, right? Including the driveways they share in common. All right, moving on.
But typically they own the whole property,
They do, jointly.
Usually
Everybody's a piece.
undivided piece of the total.
Yep. All right, anyhow.
Okay, so we got this one.
Sure, 16710. So we're going to go back to the second bullet for D2A. Second bullet, where I was just trying to clarify that the developer doesn't need to own the properties before the special permit is granted. They just have the properties under control. Because that's a weird thing in a cart and a horse, right? You're gonna buy the property before you get the decision.
No.
And you're not gonna get the decision until you buy the property.
But if you don't own it,
You have rights to it, right? You gotta
purchase and
demonstrate,
sale.
yeah, that you've got the ability to buy contingent upon permitting or whatever have you.
That's usually what it is.
Yeah, and a lot of times I've seen the owner, the actual legal owner of the property, has to sign some sort of letter saying they are giving the applicant the authority to submit the permits.
So what did it say before, just they had to own it?
So in these versions, the underlined stuff is added.
So the complete parcel must be under ownership of the development before the permit is granted.
What number is that?
B, 7,
Okay.
it's confusing. 7D,
To be.
2B.
Do you have any concerns with something along
that
those
makes
lines?
sense to me.
I mean, if they can show that they have secured interest in it.
Yeah, you can't just submit permits on somebody else's property, right? Just saying, oh, maybe I could do something.
Yeah, I think that's fine. So we'll go with that one as you have it.
Okay.
So,
Hi.
hey, how you doing? 7. This one was,
You okay with
D2.
punking that one to the next section?
say that again?
Are you okay with just directing people to that 16712 instead of restating again that developments have to be on a single lot?
So leave this the way it is?
You know what I'm saying? Are you okay with that change, or do you want to leave it as is?
We could write, like, can we add a note that says, like, so after D, write note, see all other bylaws to do with it, da da da.
I think this is kind of what that one's trying to do. He's
Yeah, I
trying to
mean,
say.
you start putting notes in there and it's gonna confuse it even more.
I was just thinking, like, parentheses, C 16712D. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that the number? Completely what it was?
For what the definition of a lot.
167.
See, the only other problem with this, if you change this and take this out, this came up last year, didn't fly.
What do you mean, like this kind of language?
Taking that individual lot out didn't go.
Because it wasn't restated anywhere else?
No, because
You know, it just got defeated at town meeting, so.
the town didn't want it.
Because that was the only part that was changing, right? It wasn't part of a larger
Yeah, so,
cleanup change.
but I
right?
think if we left in there that they have to be on a separate lot, and then,
If you're gonna say that, you might as well just leave it as is.
okay.
Wouldn't we all have to agree to bring that one back to town meeting anyway?
Why? Because it was
As-
one of those things that got defeated?
Right.
So it would be like playing the rum. Like, who's that? Who's on it?
Which we could do if we wanted to. But if you think it's a problem, we can not do it. That's fine. And we'll take it out.
And then we're gonna go with 167D. D2B.
Mm-hmm. We're just cruising through zoning changes here. You have any thoughts or input?
Just driving by, figured I'd sit through some of it.
Okay.
I was wondering, did a date get set
Yes,
hearing?
September,
Because I was in
19.
the other day, they said some things got changed around.
September 19th.
September 19th
9th,
will be the hearing for
19th.
19th.
Yeah.
the zoning changes.
Okay.
What's
When
happening
you
on
were
the
sniffing
5th?
around, did you find out the date of the town meeting yet?
Sure it wasn't the 5th?
No.
No,
But I originally watched in Area 58, the 19th was mentioned, but then they said it had to be done again. That
Yeah,
I didn't know if there was gonna be a different date.
Yeah, we did make a motion 2
Okay.
weeks ago, I mean, whatever it was, and you saw it, right?
you saw when we made them for the 19th?
Yep.
Other people here didn't see it, so we had to restate it last week.
Okay, got restated. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
anything specific that you want to bring up?
well, he's got one of the articles in,
Yeah, okay.
right?
Yeah. Well, bunch of neighbors too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're talking about any of that stuff today.
No, that was the marijuana.
Yeah.
Yep.
That will definitely be on. We're working on some others to get onto that agenda right now. That's why we
Yeah.
got the special
Yeah,
meeting.
I realized you wanted to change some other
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep. Alright, we'll carry on, I guess. So you're okay with the
Change to D.
GGB?
Yep.
Next one's 16710, right?
Yep.
So that one, we're looking to change it. So we put a period after minimum requirements. Start a new sentence. Says no more than one dwelling shall be built upon any single lot except as hereinafter provided. Period. Each building must be constructed on an individual lot for multifamily developments in accordance with section 167-12A.
Okay. And you can send that out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that one is 167-10
B.
B. And that we're putting in a period.
Putting in a period. And adding a sentence about the requirement to build buildings on individual lots.
So it won't be single lot, it'll be individual lots.
Correct. I think that's just a little more specific.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, then we get to 167.12.
Page is that on?
35, I think.
35?
34, 35. The numbering got kind of messed up. Started tracking the changes.
Okay, so we got 167.12 A1. So this one is gonna refer us back to just up above that, right?
Yep.
Which is the minimum lot, okay? Okay, that one looks all right. Just
so you had
just
scribbled that it
refer
was-
us back up, right?
But I saw in yours, you had written down contiguous.
But it covers it up here.
I think the way it's written, it doesn't, right? Because if you just said 10M, it would cover it, but M 1 through 4, one starts after it talks about the land having to be contiguous.
Yeah,
Oh, I
the
see what you
M1
mean.
through 4 is important.
So I didn't think it would necessarily need to be contiguous, right? Because what if you just have a small little wetland that you could theoretically cross?
Well, what if you got a wetland that cuts off a big piece in the back? And that's
Yes.
contiguous. I mean, that's not contiguous, but that,
But you still would not be able to develop on that portion of the property.
right, but that would count towards,
Your density,
building.
it would.
so. I just think because the rest of the bylaw kind of says contiguous for everything else, we should carry that through.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
And I mean, it could be a sliver that makes it contiguous. But it couldn't be across the lake.
Yeah, then it's,
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, that part I get. I'm just thinking on the other side, if you just happen to have a small little kind of wetland finger that just ran right across your site that you could cross with, 10-foot culvert crossing. I guess how would you go about getting around that, right? You would subdivide your property into 2 parcels and then do 2 multifamily developments?
Yeah, I mean, you could, I guess. I mean, if there's that much land over there.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I don't.
So we would just say M.
I think that would probably accomplish what you want it to accomplish. Does it make sense to you, Amy?
to add the M instead of just doing 10, 1 through 4. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, to get rid of the 1 through 4, so it includes that whole section.
Yeah, no, I think
Just
adding
state
the M
M
makes sense.
includes the whole thing, right?
And you just add the word contiguous just to reinforce it if you want to. So it would read, the number of units in a multifamily development should not exceed the number of contiguous upland acres in the parcel on which they are to be built as defined by section 16710M.
Okay.
You don't need the 1 through 4 because it's 10M, right?
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
That's all inclusive then. And that gets away with that, gets away from the 200 by 200 grid.
Yeah, I never understood that. Like,
Well, because back then, they didn't have, the upland wasn't designated the way it is now. Wetlands were, wetlands, but they were trying to say, we don't want you to be able to use all the wetlands. So they said, well, if you can't perk it, then,
okay.
it would be
All right.
considered wetland. But that's not really truthful either. I mean, it could be just that it's clay.
Yeah, or you could just do a mounded system if you just happen to have crappy soil.
Well, you couldn't
Yeah.
do it back then.
Yeah, okay.
You had to have 67 inches to the water table. Back
That would be a
when
big-
that was a,
That'd be a big system. Yeah. All
well,
right.
no, you had to have 67 inches to the water table to be able to build on the lot.
Oh, you couldn't create that separation?
No.
Why not?
See, I like it better that way.
So we had
I like
a
the
bunch of
old
lots
school
around
way.
town that people stuck pipes in to see if they could get that 67 inches, and when they had a dry spell, then try to perk it then.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, now you gotta do it to the seasonal high and all that anyway, so.
so now you do models and
Yeah,
it kind of is out the window, so upland makes more sense.
sure. Yeah, and that grid seems kind of silly to me, right? So would you be okay with that language there? Do you even?
Yeah, I think that's,
Well, I don't understand why the grid would be taken out.
because we've replaced it with the upland.
So if you have 200 acres and 100 of it is wetlands, you're only going to be able to build based on the 100 of upland that you have anyway. So now all you have to do is you got to subdivide your property and you're creating just a dummy throwaway piece of property that you could anyway. Right, and then still achieve the same result. If you had to make a certain percentage of your quote unquote lot meet that requirement.
So, take for instance, you've got 3 acres
Yep.
and 2 acres of wetlands.
You only have 1 acre to build.
The old system was that you would divide that up in a 200 by 200 grid. And let's say it worked out to be 4 squares, or what, 5 squares maybe? 3 acres.
Yeah, whatever it is, yeah.
So you'd make that grid, and then somewhere in each one of those grids, you'd have to get it to perk, okay? Then you could, 80% of that lot had to qualify for that, out of the 10 acres.
But what you could do, right, if like only 60% of your lot was, you could just carve off a chunk of your property, right, and then just not include that in the total acreage, I imagine.
Yeah.
And then you just get these dummy little parcels all scattered about.
So, but they didn't have the language at the time to say upland. And then a bylaw changed, and then they said, you know, for a house lot, you gotta have 40,000 contiguous feet of upland. So, if you're gonna use that over there, you might as well use the same language and stuff here.
Okay, so it's relating to contiguous upland instead of the grid, which sounds totally bizarre to me. The grid sounds bizarre. Okay. I just had never even seen that before, so.
Because actually, you could take that grid, lay out the grid, if it was 15 squares, and you just perk the ones that, in the corners where they touch, you know, you could get,
A chunk of them.
yeah. So, but it's just,
Pointless, right?
yeah, it's just,
antiquated.
yeah.
So now it just says, percolation testing shall be performed and witnessed by Board of Health in accordance with 310 CMR 15, parentheses, Title 5, demonstrating that the proposed areas for primary and reserve sanitary sewer leaching fields are suitable for development. Which is kind of a given, because you got to do that anyway to be able to develop the thing. I mean, maybe that just highlights the fact that they have to do it before they come in front of us, instead of saying, no, I'll deal with that with Board of Health.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So that's 167.12A2,
Mm-hmm.
and that's taking and replacing that with this, right?
Correct. And when we would propose these as one change, right? Not each individual subsection, right? So 12,
No, we
all
have,
the changes to 167.12A would be evaluated in a whole, not each individual line item.
each individual.
That's not necessarily how the selectmen presented it. I don't think they had a couple of subsections within a larger as part of an
Oh,
article.
okay, so you mean under 12?
Yeah, because we don't want people to pick and choose. Well, I like this one, but not that one. And maybe this one, but not that one, because some of them won't work unless you do all of them together. Right? I think you can propose a change to the whole entire section.
Yeah, like 167.12A,
Which is all the multifamily stuff.
right.
And take it or leave it.
Yeah, and we get it on the floor, somebody could ask to have one of them pulled out separate.
Yeah,
That's up to the moderator at that point.
and that's fine. I just don't want each thing to go in piecemeal and then have,
Take forever and ever.
yeah, it would take forever and potentially some get through and some get turned down and all of a sudden it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Well, it would be up to us. I think it would be great at town meeting if 167.12A multifamily development is listed as is, and then
Absolutely. And then-
listed with the
then limit
changes, and then
So yeah, it would be like this
And-
where you see the strike throughs of what's being removed and what's being added.
right, and then whoever wants to get up and explain the entire thing and the reason and answer questions, because that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, sure. I have no problem
think
getting
that's-
up, but I mean, the thing of it is, I totally agree. You can't just put this in
No.
as a change and have people follow what's going on.
Yeah, no,
So
it's a
like you
comment to
asked Charlie.
Charlie. Yeah.
About putting it in, he said no problem.
Yep. Okay.
So we would list 12A the way it is, and then the proposed changes.
Okay.
Okay, and then 4,
Changing unit to building. Or is the purpose of that actually to say no unit?
Shall have
Because
it.
you can't build a building more than 2.5 stories tall anyway, right? So how could you have a unit more than 2.5 stories tall?
yeah, it doesn't make sense really, the unit. Should be building.
But then the last sentence, right? It says this limitation will be enforced by a covenant with the purchaser of each unit.
Right,
So I guess if you have multiple units in a building, they collectively cannot change the height of the building.
I mean, the height of the building doesn't really even kind of make, like you're gonna change it afterwards.
I don't know.
Add on a third story. Just to your unit.
You know, you get the penthouse unit. The second sentence have any value? This limitation will be enforced by a covenant with the purchaser of each unit.
Well, it would probably be in any, HOA or condominium documents just to cover it.
Sure. So
Well, you're not gonna get a building permit if the building is more than 2.5 stories.
You
or you
should
shouldn't.
not, right? But that's one of those things again where you want to reinforce the height requirement because we are allowing for changes from the other setback requirements.
Right,
Yes.
so if you put building there, does it make sense at the last sentence?
I think it does, right? Because the covenant runs with each
Unit,
unit owner, right?
Should
Not
we
the
just write
building.
no unit or building? No building or unit to just.
well, the
unify?
building is the whole thing, that's really what's restricted to 2.5 stories. The
Mhm.
units are within that, so by virtue of them being in it, they're already,
I would
so
agree.
I would say the building,
So, like it's written, you're cool with that?
change it to, from unit to building.
Sure.
So you don't think it sets it off from the last sentence?
No, because it's just telling you where the covenant will be recorded. Okay. Minimum 167, 12A, 5.
Some of that's terminology, because technically it's a front yard as opposed to a front setback. You looking for the table?
Yeah.
All right, would you agree they are yards, not setbacks?
Yards.
We're looking at just straight terminology.
They call them minimum yard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense to have it say the same thing that says somewhere else.
On the, right here.
Yeah.
Never noticed that.
Especially in the next sentence, it says the minimum rear yard shall be 100 feet.
Yeah. Yep.
So let me ask you that. You believe that that is what is going to dictate the siting of a building on the lots that are not yet to be created?
The setbacks?
Yeah, so you're creating a subdivision now. So to do a multifamily development, unless you're putting all the buildings on a single lot with existing frontage, you have to do a subdivision.
So the setbacks? Plus
So
all
are we
the
saying
yards.
that those lots are now created and each one of these buildings now needs to adhere to all these setbacks for all the newly created lots?
Right.
Which are a lot more restrictive than if you were building single-family lots.
Well, I don't think 75 feet is that.
Well, that one not so much,
Okay.
but
100 feet between buildings? Like I said, I'm not sure if that was fire.
I've done plenty of developments where you're 20 feet between buildings.
Yeah, I know, but you're talking more the city too.
Well,
I mean-
fire codes are fire codes. It doesn't matter if you're in a town or a city.
Yeah, it does.
What's that?
I mean, you go in the city and the buildings are side by side. They got ladder trucks for everything.
Yeah, and you have to design it with the right fire rating for the walls and separations and all that. I don't think it's a fire code issue. It may be a fire,
Regulation or...
not even a regulation. It might be a preference of the local
Preference.
fire department
Right.
to enable them to fight the fires better.
Yeah.
I don't know the origin of that. So let me ask you this, being devil's advocate, if the requirement is 100 feet between multifamily buildings, if you have a duplex next to a single family building, does that duplex have to be 70 feet off the property line?
Is a duplex different than a multifamily?
I think a multifamily building is that one of the definitions that we want to change?
Isn't
Yeah.
it like, yeah.
Yeah, because we have definition for two-family and dwelling and duplex.
We do not have multifamily building. We have multifamily development and multifamily dwelling.
Yeah, so we wanted to change that up too. I mean, one of them was we wanted to,
So this was going to be multifamily building.
I don't know which section you're on.
167.3 is definitions,
3?
page 10.
I think the multifamily dwelling, a building intended and designed to be occupied by
More than one family.
more than two.
Right, because where was duplex? How was that defined? Was that under dwelling or?
We don't have duplex.
Oh, we do.
We do?
It was a weird definition,
Oh,
right?
it was
Weird
dwelling
term.
duplex.
Yeah.
That's why I just found it.
What's the definition of dwelling duplex?
A two-family building designed with separated dwelling units side by side, separated by a firewall. Where a dwelling unit, should I read that?
Yeah.
One or more living or sleeping rooms arranged for the use of one or more individuals living as a single housekeeping unit, with permanent provisions for cooking, living, sanitary, eating, and sleeping facilities.
Yeah, because a dwelling, a building or portion thereof designed exclusively for residential occupancy, including single, two-family, or multi-family dwellings, but not including hotels, motels, boarding rooms, trailers, structures solely for transit overnight. So we call out all three there.
Mm-hmm. And then a multifamily dwelling includes duplexes by the definition, the way it's currently written.
Under,
Because it just says one or more. So is that where you want
which
it?
does?
Multifamily dwelling.
Yeah, that's the one we needed to change. So I think that needs to be more than two.
Correct.
That's just 167.3, there's no sub.
Yeah, I think it's all under that.
Definitions. Multifamily. Multi. Multifamily dwelling, right? That's what we're
Mhm.
changing.
Then I think you need to change the term that's on the table too, because right now it just says multifamily buildings
On which one?
on the table, right? Because it says 100 feet between multifamily buildings. Or do you think that doesn't matter?
Multifamily.
I'm looking up a definition, sorry.
Well, multifamily development, 75, multifamily buildings, 100.
It should be consistent.
Consistently different.
Which is why it would be fine if they were different, if there was a difference. Does that
Definition.
make sense? It's kind of circular language, but
You got it.
there are no setbacks for developments because the developments don't exist. Really, right? Everything is just multifamily buildings. You can't have a setback for a development project. You have to have a setback to a building, right?
Yeah, well, 3 is 100 feet for multifamily development. That's the rear.
So,
2
so you
is
can,
the
yeah.
side, and that's
So you could view
100
that two
feet
ways, right?
buildings.
So you could view the multifamily development to include the creation of the lots, right? So let's say you would then give a 75-foot front setback to the entire parcel before the right-of-way is dedicated along the frontage and 100 feet around the back. Independent of how the lots are created, but that, like on the parcel prior to development, but I don't know that that would.
75 feet on the front.
Right, so let's say you had a parcel that kind of looked like something like this, and you had a road that went through here. You would give and ultimately you're gonna have to create a subdivision that does something like that so you can make your lots.
Yeah.
The way it's currently written, that setback would be kind of this area. This would be your front yard,
Okay.
right? And your rear yard would be, it's kind of weird on this shape, but let's make it more triangular, right? And your rear yard would be this. But
And
if you
100
look at
feet
it,
between the buildings.
and 100 feet between the buildings. But then if you look at it in terms of the subdivision has to be created so you can put these things on lots, then all of a sudden your setbacks change and your rear yards end up going, all this stuff end up including all this area.
So you're saying,
It's just using
But
the
if we
word
change
development
that
doesn't
to
make
buildings-
sense.
oh, I see. So you're saying like it's meaning the development should have 150 off of the back instead of the buildings. Is that what you mean?
Instead of the individual lots that you're going to create, because the multifamily development just requires you need the 10-acre piece of property. So you could say, all right, here's my 10 acres. I'm giving you these rear and front yard setbacks on these 10 acres, and then I'm gonna build this subdivision, which you're gonna make me do, and I'm gonna provide the setback requirements for the buildings in accordance with the table, which are 30, 50, and whatever the rear yard setback is, 40,
About 100 feet between buildings.
and 100 feet between buildings. What's the side yard setback normally? That's just 100 feet between buildings. Why does that matter? Why wouldn't you just make it 50 feet from the property line then? Like, why are we?
Yeah, like I said, I don't know where they came up with the 100.
You want to just change everything and say multifamily buildings? So then what happens if that requirement's in there and then the definition of multifamily building doesn't get revised?
Then we're right back to the same mess.
Except now it prohibits duplexes, yeah.
So wouldn't we have to say that all of these would go in order? That if the first one doesn't change, then the rest of them can, or something like that.
Is it random? I think they go random, don't they?
But you can make
Unless they're
some-
tied.
Okay.
So if we had two that were tied together, we could say that, you know,
These
these
have to.
But they're all gonna
these
be
need to go, because if this one doesn't go, then that one doesn't work.
Okay.
So,
If you change it to buildings and the definition of buildings or multifamily dwellings,
so we're talking about changing this first, right?
yeah,
That change to more than two, right?
So the definition.
yes.
I want to get that done before I forget it.
Instead of more than one, more than two, because then that no longer includes duplexes, which have their own definition.
Right. And the other one we didn't have to change, the development.
Yeah, that one's fine. So then on the table, should they all say 75?
Well, shouldn't that other one, ownership of not less than 10 acres in size?
Right, so we say this
Two.
like 4 different times in the stupid zoning regulations.
But I was just trying to clarify that, so you gotta have 10 acres or more,
Contiguous upland.
no, to propose the development, right?
Correct.
That's where the confusion was coming in, because it said that you had to have more than 10 acres in size to start with.
Yeah, I guess another question, right? After you subdivide, now does each one of those pieces of property need to be 10 acres?
If you say to start with, I'd say no.
But it doesn't seem that way, right? Because now we're saying you gotta subdivide.
Right. But I'm saying, like, right here, if we put in there 10 acres in size to start with, or to qualify for the development?
Prior to subdivision? I think that should be clarified somehow,
Yeah.
right? Because then all of a sudden now you need 100 acres.
Yeah. And that's not what they're looking for, because everything is the 10. So prior to subdivision?
Or we could even say in accordance with section
Prior to
12A,
creating.
whatever.
Prior to creating the subdivision?
Prior to permitting. Say prior to creation. Because what
Prior
if you
to
don't have to
creation
subdivide,
and
right? So
permitting.
what if you do have an A&R piece of property that you want to put a big building on? You got the frontage and everything else, right? You don't have to subdivide it.
Right.
So maybe that terminology doesn't make sense.
But the 10 acres, if you're gonna do more than one building, then you gotta, well,
No,
you could do an A&R.
yeah, you could do it all in one building that has frontage.
But if you had a big parcel and,
Yeah,
and you
I guess my
wanna
point
do
being is
two
you don't always
fives.
have to subdivide.
yeah,
Right? So you can't say prior to subdivision.
prior to dividing,
What about a prerequisite of having a multifamily development is that you must have 10 plus acres?
yeah, well, that's pretty much what this is. Ownership of not less than 10 acres in size.
I would say in accordance with whatever section 12A, and then that gets into the nuts and the bolts of the other more specific requirements.
Because that talks about the density.
Mm-hmm.
So refer a definition to 16712A.
Sure. That's right. Is that what it is? 167.12A?
I think so.
167.12A. Multifamily development. Density regulations.
Okay, so bullet 3 in 167.12 needs to be clarified then, right?
Minimum parcel size.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the place to clarify it, right?
What are we clarifying? The minimal parcel size should be 10 acres?
Yeah, because what happens, right, if somebody has a 20-acre piece of property, they say, all right, I need to subdivide it to put in 4 buildings.
It just says the minimum parcel.
Right, but now all of a sudden they've got 4 5-acre pieces of property. They can't do it anymore because now none of those parcels are 10 acres.
Well, So then they'd have to put them together in order to.
But you can't if you're having the individual buildings on the individual lots, right?
So the minimum parcel size shall be 10 acres.
But they still have to
To-
have a minimum setback.
But the setbacks are
And the
different.
minimum rear and the minimum this. And
Yep.
it has to be on a lot.
Yeah, I think there's a weird little nuance here, right? So if you do go in sequence and you subdivide first, then you've kind of screwed yourself and you don't have that 10-acre piece of property anymore.
The 200 by 200, oh, that's the one we already changed.
Yeah.
I was thinking I was seeing it again.
So we're thinking out loud here, right? If we say the minimum parcel size shall be 10 acres prior to
Development.
development, I think that'd be
And
fine.
then that would cover subdivision or whatever.
Yep.
See, that makes me confused if we want everything on a same lot.
No, you gotta have a 10-acre parcel to start with prior to development.
To make multifamilies.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Prior to development. Is that?
Sure.
I thought it was just me.
Which one were you at now?
167.
I think we're okay. Well, we're talking about the fact that how do we go down that tangent?
We thought we were gonna need to add the street, right, to that.
Oh yeah, to the open space calculation.
We're creating lots and the street isn't part of it. I don't know how you don't. You know what I mean?
And you just don't, right? Because the street's all like 90% impervious. I don't know. I think Gordon's point was that each building pad, if you want to call it that, development parcel would just have to meet that requirement. Because it has to, per the regular zoning requirements anyhow.
So we just need to get this to say that all buildings must be situated on a lot meeting the minimum requirements of a lot of 150 feet of frontage, 40,000 square feet.
All the new parcels.
We need to say lots.
Lots, yes. Or you want to just make the general statement that all individual lots have to meet the dimensional requirements because we have that whole irregularity thing, and what's the section that defines what the... Oh, that's in the
Lots are-
subdivision regs, right?
Well, lots are defined here. It's gonna be a long motion.
Can't we just say listed in the table of dimensional and density regulations of the town of Halifax?
Yeah, we could.
mean, I think we need to call it out here because this is the density regulations for the specific use. So it would just take maybe under 3. We get minimum parcel size shall be 10 acres, and I think we said that was
So, but again, we're talking about the parcel for
right,
the
a development,
development.
and any lots created in the development for the buildings must meet the minimum requirements.
But 5 is where we talk about all the deviations from the minimum requirements, right? Including all the increased setback requirements.
Well, the requirements for a minimum lot, which is 40,000 square feet, 150 feet of frontage.
And the irregularity, and you gotta draw that little circle, right?
Well, I mean, if you have to meet the requirements of a minimum lot in any district, the same as any district, then those requirements apply, don't they?
They do, I would think, yeah. So you wanna make it part of that one, or you wanna make it part of 3, where we're talking about the other things that are in this table here?
But I
I'm
think,
sorry, it's part of
but I
5.
think here we're talking about the minimum parcel size to be 10 acres before development, prior to the development.
Okay, then we say each created lot, say. That's not true, because, what again, if you don't do a subdivision?
Well, you're saying each created lot that's subdivided.
So
Must.
each lot included in a multifamily development shall otherwise include minimum 40,000 square feet, 150 feet of frontage.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta start with a minimum of 10 acres.
Mhm.
Each building that you're putting on there, if you're only gonna do one building, then you don't have to create a lot.
Yeah, and the other caveat that we put in there, the 110 feet of frontage would allow you to put a building on an A&R lot with 110 feet of frontage. Right.
So then
We could say each lot with a,
maybe you do have to have a minimum lot size of 10 acres with 150 feet of frontage.
but
Yeah,
again,
because then it's gonna change everything in the town.
Right?
or if you say each lot with a multifamily building shall have a minimum of 40,000 square feet and 150 feet of frontage.
Yeah, that would cover the whole parcel too, right?
Yes, unless you're gonna put your road in, and then that's not a lot anymore.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if each building has to be on a lot situated with
Correct.
150 feet of frontage,
Yeah, I think
the
it covers
10-acre
both
parcel would
scenarios.
have to have that, if you were gonna do one.
Feet of frontage as. Do you want a reference for the section that applies to, so it talks about all the contiguous area and all that stuff?
Is referenced by the table of dimensions and density.
But
You mean?
so then again, if you're creating these lots, does each one of these individual lots have to have 40,000 square feet of upland of your 10-acre lot?
Yeah. That's the minimum requirement for a lot. If you've got 10 acres and you're gonna put 3 buildings on there,
Yep.
to put 40,000 square feet in there is not a problem because you're taking 10 acres and divide it by 3.
You should not
Right.
necessarily have a problem. Yeah. Okay. So each lot with a multifamily building shall have a minimum of 40,000 square feet and 150 feet of frontage in accordance with, what's this section? Is that M16710M?
I'm looking.
Or does that not make sense? Do they actually need to have 40,000 square feet for each unit?
For what?
Each unit.
Oh god, no.
Well,
I
don't you
think
have
it
it
is
in the
each
parcel?
unit.
For each lot?
Did you have it in the parcel?
But then you've lost that bonus that you got where you got the credit for the roadway. Right?
Where did the credit from the roadway come from?
Because the area that ultimately you're going to exclude from the lots is included in your density calculation. Right? Because ultimately you have a 10-acre piece of property. You're going to lose some of that to subdivide the roadway, right? So you're going to end up with 9 acres of parcels.
Stay levy.
I don't necessarily think it should be 40,000 per unit in each lot.
It's 40,000 per unit, per house, per everything in the town of Halifax by the bylaws.
Well, not the way it's currently written.
How?
Because multifamily, you just need 10 acres and you could build 10 houses on 10 acres.
Not necessarily. It means that that's where it's being misunderstood. In my opinion, it has to use all the density regulations. It just says that you need at least that in order to start having a multifamily, so that you didn't put multifamilies on less of that. So the town of Halifax made that bylaw so that you needed at least 10 in order to have a multifamily.
But if you have 10
But it
acres,
didn't say
if you
how
have
many
10 acres of
lots.
upland, you're allowed to build 10 units. It's 1 unit per acre of upland is what you're allowed to build.
Minus streets, minus.
Now, right now, it's just 1 per acre of the pre-development parcel.
So the thing of it is, if you took a 10-acre parcel that had 900 feet of frontage on it, you could just divide that 3 times no road and put all 10 units on there.
Yeah, you're not going to get any more or less density. It's going to be the same number of units. Does that mean worse or better?
I'm just
Yeah.
throwing that out there. I mean, it's like,
And again, getting back to the duplex, right? You don't need to have an 80,000 square foot lot to build a duplex, right?
you know,
That doesn't make sense.
well, I mean, a lot of stuff doesn't make sense. I mean, you should have some things that are a different density. I mean, we had talked about when we were doing the master plan, doing cluster zoning too. You know,
I think
where you
that'd be
could
great.
put in a shorter road and give them less frontage, but the backland all, you know, less impact on the roadway and stuff. But, I mean, we don't have that. So, like I said, if you didn't count the roadway in this and it worked out, then that would be the plus side, right?
So for that purpose, I would be in favor of just leaving it as is. I don't think we need to have 40,000 square feet on each lot per each unit in that lot.
I think we do. To clarify it. Because to me, when I look at this, every single thing needs 40,000 square feet. I think somehow that duplex thing must have been not thought of. Because why wouldn't anybody have an in-law if they could just do a duplex? With all their restrictions on in-laws and things like that, why would you even bother with it?
I think there's other code requirements when you're doing a duplex as opposed to an in-law, like separate gas meters and all that other stuff. It's
Right, no, I understand, but you know what I mean? Like if I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna have an in-law, but now I have to have it re-upped every 5 years, why wouldn't you just do a duplex?
because of the cost. You probably have to do more work, I would imagine.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, from a value standpoint, why wouldn't you? I would be in favor of just leaving it as is with the number of units per upland, contiguous upland acres prior to development.
Then how do you keep them on a separate lot?
What do you mean?
No requirement for what the lot is?
No, the lot still needs to be that 40,000 with the 150. I think that's fine.
Okay. I mean, we're probably gonna have to
'Cause
rehash
realistically-
it another time
You
anyhow,
can't even
so.
build a house, right? Because if you have 75 feet of setback on each side, that's 150 feet. Oh no, it's not 75 feet of setback, that's 75 from buildings. And you got still your 30-foot setback, so it's 60.
And 45.
And you got
Thir-
50 in the front, or 75 in the front?
75 in the front.
If you just draw it up real quick, right? You got 150 across the front. You got 75 here. You got 30. You got 30. And what's the rear? 100? Doesn't leave you much, right? Just
But the minimum lot is 200 feet deep.
okay.
It leaves
You
you
can't even-
25 feet.
So it leaves you 25 by 90, which actually it's shallow, but it's wide. So what's
But the thing of it is, you know, you're gonna have 10 acres that you're dividing up. There's no reason for you to divide it up, you know, less than a third of the 10 acres or, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, you gotta use up the land. I mean, you can't use it for something else afterwards. So you're gonna have to divide up that 10 acre parcel into lots. If you did 4 lots, you're still looking at, how big are the lots? 2.5 acres?
Depends on how long your road is it skinny?
Well,
yeah, whatever.
You know, 2 acre lots, I mean, these are 40,000 square feet, so.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with this part of it, but then to your point, if you're gonna end up with 2 acre lots, then you're back down to 2 buildings per unit, and all those little fractions are gonna chop away at what you could put on each individual lot.
Well, I'm just saying that as long as we have this as the minimum lot size, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Oh, I am too.
Yeah.
I was just saying that as far as them not being able to fit things on there, you're gonna have to chop that.
Yeah, you're not gonna do a 1 acre lot for these things,
No,
because then what's the point?
exactly. So I think as long as we get the minimum lot size, then I think that's good. And where are we putting
Yeah.
that in?
Well, are you okay with that?
I don't know. I want the minimum lot size. I'm a little boggled with all the back and forth right now, to be honest with you.
I think at least we're on the same page with all the dimensional requirements there, but it sounded like the one thing that you weren't supportive of was just keeping how it's currently written with the density based on the pre-development parcel.
Well, I just want to clarify it so that, you know, we make sure there's 150 feet of frontage and that we make sure that each unit's on its own,
Lot.
building. How many units can be in these buildings is what my mind keeps going to.
As many as you want.
That sounds crazy.
Well,
But you need to
no,
have a
it's not.
huge piece of property to.
It's not crazy, because if you want to do a multifamily and you've got 5 acres or 10 acres and you want to divide it in 2 and put 5 units in this one and 5 units in that one, there's 2 buildings on 10 acres. If you want to do 10 units in one building, then you got 1 building on 10 acres. So the density thing is already there.
And the buildings can't be more than 2.5 stories tall, so you're not going to get, 6-story towering buildings over the street.
Well, I guess it would be up to the town of Halifax anyways for them to vote whether or not they would want this or not.
Oh yeah, whatever we're talking about, it's got to be voted.
So I guess I just want it to make sense so that it coincides with everything else. Because when I look at this and I see you need 40,000 square feet and 150, I don't know how.
Yeah, so bullet 3 we're trying to clarify now. So it's going to say the minimum parcel size shall be 10 acres prior to development Each lot with a multifamily building shall have a minimum of 40,000 square feet and 150 feet of frontage in accordance with 16710M. And 16710M talks about those contiguous upland requirements.
So you got a minimum requirement of what again was it?
40,000 square feet and 150 feet of frontage. Alright, so it'll say,
10N only talks about all lots with the exception of estate lots shall have a ratio. Oh, so we're talking about ratios right now.
No.
where's that one? Because
The
that
one
one actually
above
should
that.
apply to.
M.
M.
Oh, I
Probably
thought you
should say-
said N.
Probably should say N though also, right?
I'm like, what is that even?
Yeah, so it says the minimum parcel size shall be 10 acres prior to development. Each lot with a multifamily building shall have a minimum of 40,000 square feet in area in accordance with 16710M and 150 feet of frontage. So at least clarify the resulting lot requirements. So should we also add that 110 feet of frontage in that bullet there too, right? So minimum parcel size shall be 10 acres prior to development with 110 feet minimum feet of frontage.
But then you were talking about the A&R lot that have to have 150 feet of frontage, and we're just,
So that would be for a multifamily development, right? And then the next one, we said each lot containing a building needs to have 150 feet of
okay,
frontage.
so that keeps it in line with the A&R.
I think so. Does that make sense?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I
If
think
you're
it
gonna- if
does.
you're gonna put a building on it, it's gotta meet
The lot
a
requirement.
lot requirement.
But the development as a whole could be done on a piece of property that has 110 feet of frontage.
The development could.
Correct. A multifamily development.
Subdivision.
Yeah.
You want to use that word?
Yep, because that's what it would be. Would be a multifamily development subdivision.
Really?
A multifamily development could happen if you had 150 feet of frontage. You could put 10 units in one building,
Smack dab with the driveway on the road.
right?
Yeah, correct.
But if you don't have the frontage to do that, and you're not gonna put it in one building,
Mm-hmm.
then you would need 110 feet for a subdivision for that development.
Correct, but the subdivision is just the process by which you're going to create the development, right?
But we're allowing them to do that on the 10-acre parcel.
Correct. but we don't ever refer to a multifamily development subdivision anywhere else.
Isn't a development an AKA subdivision?
I don't think so. You're gonna have to do a subdivision, right? Because if you want to put a building on that lot, it's gonna be 150 feet of frontage. Do you think it even needs to be said what the minimum frontage is for a multifamily development parcel?
Yeah, I do.
Because if you try and do it on a 50 acre or 50-foot frontage piece of parcel, you're not going to be able to subdivide it.
Right.
And you can't put a building on it because now it says that a building needs to have 150 feet of frontage.
You can have an estate lot on 50 feet, retreat lot 50 feet of frontage.
Right, but that's not a multifamily.
Right.
But it could be. That's a good point.
No, it can't because it only has 50 feet.
But right now it's not defined what the minimum frontage requirement is for a multifamily development parcel.
How? It says 150 feet for everything else in town.
But like you just said, a retreat lot. You could say, I've got a retreat lot, I'm going to do a multifamily development on it.
You can't because you need 150 feet.
But where does it say that?
Let me find it.
I think it needs to be spelled out.
Just to clarify that, because I wasn't even thinking of that loophole. That seems like a little bit of a loophole that somebody could point to.
You know, it says that no building, under 10, it says that no building shall be erected unless it's on the minimum lot.
Except
No
as
building.
hereafter allowed.
Right.
But you can't build a retreat lot, right? You see how there could be an argument made
But
for
that's
that
a separate article in the estate lot is separate.
167.16. No such estate lot shall have less than 80,000 square feet in area with a minimum frontage of 50 feet. The access to said estate lot shall be a minimum of 50 feet in width. No more than one dwelling shall exist on said estate lot. No more than one lot shall be served by the access way. No access way shall abut any other estate lot. The 80,000 square foot of the area shall be contiguous upland. Any wetland on proposed estate lot shall be determined and accurately delineated on Form A submission plan.
I think bullet C covers it, right? It says more than one dwelling shall exist on the estate lot. So you're covered there.
Which one?
So bullet C, right?
167.16
bullet C.
C.
It says more than one dwelling shall exist
Yeah.
on said estate lot. So you can't do a multifamily on that one. So then what do you want it to say then? You want it to say the minimum parcel size for a multifamily development shall be 10 acres prior to development. And include a minimum of 110 feet of frontage. Provide a minimum of 110 feet of frontage.
Where is the street that, is there like a definition for street or a
It's in the-
bylaw you guys can help me?
I think
Street, right there. What about, where it says, I've read it before, but I don't know which number it is, where it says 60 with 30 and 30.
I think in the subdivision it says it's 50 to 25 and there's
30.
50 with 30 and 30. Alright,
So what do you have
so
there?
you're okay with it saying, a minimum parcel size for a multifamily development shall be 10 acres prior to development and provide a minimum of 110 feet of frontage. 10 acres with 110 feet of frontage prior to development.
How does that go about with the 30 feet from each buffer on each side? You know what I mean, that we put into that? How does that go about on that street?
I think to your point, the more strict would apply. Right?
So then would it be 110 to 60 would be 170 feet?
I think it needs to say 110 feet to be able to be subdivided. 'Cause we don't want to say that the minimum lot has to be 110, because then all of a sudden,
For a multifamily development, but any property with a multifamily building on it needs to have 150.
so if you were gonna put one lot on that 10 acres, you can't do it with 110 feet.
Correct. Because your building lot needs to still have that much.
And you think that's clear, the way that's written?
Somebody reading it for the first time might not know why those numbers are there, but I think it spells it out pretty clearly.
I like to be clear. Less loopholes.
So let me read that again.
Blow it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll blow it up a little bit. This one here.
Yep. You don't think we could spell it out, that there's 50 feet and 30 feet on either side, so.
Because that's based on being able to build the radii for the right of way, right? 'Cause you need
Well,
to-
that and the buffer.
Correct, but your road isn't going to be 50 feet wide, right? So theoretically, your actual curb to curb pavement width isn't 50 feet wide. So you could.
But I mean, that's what you're gonna use. I mean, if you're gonna put the utilities in there and stuff, you're gonna be in that 50 feet.
Does it all go behind the walks? Do most of the utilities go in between?
I
the
mean, they
driveways?
can go both ways, but what I'm saying is, if you take a 24-foot road, you put we have 18-inch berm, so there's 3 feet more, there's 27. You do a 5-foot sidewalk on either side, there's 37.
So even 40 and 30 and 30 gets you 100. But to do a subdivision roadway, you need to have 110 anyway to be able to tie in your radii and the
Right.
returns.
And it would also incorporate that 30-foot buffer. Doing both things at the same time.
Yes.
But that would give it to you.
So So what do you want it to say? Just say under 10 feet of frontage in order to subdivide, in order to install a subdivision roadway.
I mean, I guess we could say it's 110 feet prior to, yeah, I think that works, because if you're gonna put a building on it, then you have to have the 150, right?
Yes.
Is it fair for anybody who might be abutting 110 feet? You know, that all of a sudden something could happen next to them?
Well, I
They
mean,
come out with a regular subdivision.
there's the process for everybody to come out.
Yeah, but if we allow it on 110 feet, is that in any way giving somebody a detriment from, where is, I'm looking for, where is our road need?
235,
Thank you.
it's in the back.
That was easy.
21. Proposed street shall be classified by the board as provided below, depending on the amount of traffic, major street, collector street, okay.
That's the, and then we get over here, alignment. And the alignment talks about what you need. And that's the other thing, I think we should look at that too, is that 235.
28.
Yeah,
What do you want to look at there?
just to say that 30 foot should be tangent.
Oh, yeah, instead of, what was it?
Number
It was-
4,
Yeah.
Is that a zoning thing or that's a subdivision right?
that's subdivision.
Yeah, so that's not even anything we can change, right?
Yeah, we can change it, we propose a change for that as well.
Yeah.
Where does tangent go in there, though? Property lines at street intersections shall be rounded with a street line radius of not less than 30 feet from,
Yeah, because to that point, you could do a 52-foot wide piece of frontage, you could put it in, if your radii aren't tangent.
So you would put in there that the property line, the street intersection should be rounded with a street line radius tangent to the property line and the street.
You could, if that's the intent of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, because other than that, it could be this long.
Yeah, and I'd take a subdivision in Belmont like that, where you just have to be able to fit the curb. As long as you fit the curb return in there to be able to get the actual vehicles in and out. The property line didn't necessarily have to come in tangent with big curves on it. So you just needed like 60 feet of frontage to be able to put in a roadway.
but that's not what.
It's not the intent of what we have.
All reverse curves on major and collector street shall be separated by a tangent at least 100 feet long.
So that's as you're driving down the road and the road turns to the right.
Oh, okay.
Before it can turn back, and you have to go 100 feet.
Of a straight segment, yeah.
So that you can't get this.
Yeah. No more San Fran streets.
Yeah, so-
We can grab that another time too. I mean, we got enough stuff in front of us.
Yeah, let's just look at this multifamily thing. So are you cool with like this language, or do you want
I
to
think
provide an
so.
explanation of why we're saying that?
No, I think, I think we'll have to explain why at town meeting, but I think that's, as long as it makes sense when you read it, right?
Yeah, it does, and I think it captures the scenario that would prevent somebody from being able to build on a piece of property that has less than 1/10 with an actual house.
Okay. So then that's 3, we're gonna change.
Can we just reread all these?
Yeah, we'll just reread them into the minutes and
Let's do
vote them.
So 4 now currently reads, no building shall have more than 2 1/2 stories which contain any amount of living space. This limitation will be enforced by the covenant or purchaser of each unit. 5. Should be 5. Reads, the minimum front yard shall be 75 feet, the minimum rear yard shall be 100 feet, and a minimum of 75 feet shall be provided between any 2 buildings. A minimum 30-foot undisturbed vegetated buffer free of parking or any structures shall be provided between the development and adjacent properties. Any change in its natural state shall require approval by the planning board as part of site plan review under section 167-28. So that was a clarification of something else in there that we didn't talk about. And you're okay with having the flexibility to review and approve that?
Yep.
If somebody does want to like do something right at the corners there or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're just clarifying that we would provide the site plan review authority as opposed to before. It was the special permit granting authority.
Which is who? Yeah.
Yeah,
Which,
that's fine.
which may have been something, yeah. And then I think there's going to be a caveat that started talking about the frontage, but we covered that in the other one.
Right.
So that's the end of 5.
And so now 6.
6, minimum residential floor area, no multifamily housing, whether condominium or rental, shall be erected, constructed, remodeled, or altered. And this whole thing didn't make sense to me, so I'm proposing that it says, so that the smallest dwelling unit contain less than 1,000 square feet of living space, excluding areas reserved for parking or garages. Before it used to say, nothing
The
can
lowest
be,
levels.
that the lowest level
I.e. ground floor or equivalent.
of living space per dwelling unit, which doesn't make any sense, i.e. in a unit contain less than 750 square feet. I don't know why the lower level would matter any more than any of the upper levels. You know what the intent there was?
I don't know what the intent might have been. My imagination would say that maybe it had to do with the fact that they wanted.
I believe the state law is 750 square feet.
Oh, so it is a state law.
Well, I've done lots of apartments. I think we're like 400 or 500 square feet
Really?
for an apartment.
So it
Micro
could be
units.
state, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's a state law.
Up in the city, like Soho area, that, what is that area?
In South Boston, Seaport and all that, yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Teeny tiny.
Do they have
You
like
okay
a
with
kitchen in that?
It's all like a big studio, basically is what it is. Your beds push up against the wall and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you got room for a bed, a kitchen, small bathroom, that's about it.
Europe.
Toilet and the shower all together.
Yeah.
It's like a camper, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
So you're okay with having the smallest unit contain no less than 1,000 square feet? Or you want to stick
Yeah.
with 750?
I'm okay with 1,000.
1,000 square feet's a nice little house for somebody, you know?
So do you feel like it should be smaller to give people flexibility to even go create more affordable type housing?
I guess 750 would still be fine, right?
Okay. Yeah, we found that. I just didn't know if there was a market for that kind of thing.
Barely, but
Do they make houses or units that small around here that you've seen?
I usually have people saying like more than 900, more than 1,000.
Alright. So if you make it, you know, townhome type thing, 750, maybe somebody will build something like that. Okay. So if it now reads, minimum residential floor area, no multifamily housing, whether condominium or rental, shall be erected, reconstructed, remodeled, or altered so that the smallest dwelling unit contains less than 750 square feet of living space, excluding areas reserved for parking garages.
Okay.
Period. And then just a silly little thing that just says design this thing in accordance with the stormwater.
I like that addition because it wasn't in here, right?
It was not.
So
And that
that'll be
refers to-
7.
Correct. Yeah.
You wanna keep going on these, or you think that's,
Choose. No idea. Is there anything else, at least in this section, the sign part of it,
I think,
and the parking part?
this was the same, right? That's what we started with.
Yep, I just added that word, or that category.
Oh, it wasn't in there before.
It was not in there.
What, multifamily housing by permit, special permit, that?
The site plan review, 16728.
Oh, yeah.
28.
I think it's on the page number, it says 71 at the bottom.
I don't have page numbers. Do I? Oh, 61?
Yep,
Oh,
try 71.
excuse me.
These numbers might be wrong though.
Oh, multi-dwelling, and multifamily development.
I'm gonna toss that in there for clarification.
Yep.
You leaving?
Have a good night.
quitting?
Did we bore you?
Little insight behind anything else.
Thank you.
Gonna be a vigorous debate, I'm sure.
At least that's how it all came up now. Got decided and
Well, this isn't the first night at it. So 167.
28.
Yeah, just adding multifamily development as a category, just to bring it home.
I'll be right back.
That should do us, huh? For this round.
I think so, right? Unless we want to get into the ability to
Site
grant
plan.
variances for parking. Some requiring some silly stuff that people could do. Give us a sign stamp plan.
What's that?
Yeah, just on the requirements, provide us some information. How do you feel about that parking one? You want to try and tackle that now?
Which one?
This parking thing?
So it's under 28.
No, that's not even a parking thing. That's just saying, if you have any waivers, tell us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So we didn't have anything in there for
No.
having a registered?
What I missed.
Not much. And that's obviously going to be cleaned up. So that'll be 75 feet instead of 50 in the table.
Okay, we'll sign later.
Yeah. We weren't here for Dunkin' Donuts, but they tried to.
I listened to it.
Yeah. But Amy, they tried to. You know, the Dunkin' Donuts there that they tried to put a light that pointed towards the building, essentially creating this like shadow effect, and they weren't allowed to because the building department considered it to be internally lit. You know, like you don't want a light that projects outward. So they couldn't get their sign built, and it took like 4 meetings, and ultimately they got their approval, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gave it to them.
But it was just a process, just like a weird like nuance in the language.
Yeah, I read through these the other day.
All right, so you want to go back through those, and then
Sure.
we got 167D2.
Want to start at the very beginning?
Oh, you know what I don't have is the ones that we were going to do here for these. Right?
Yep. Yeah.
And we have to change one of these
That's a 75.
between buildings.
Yeah. So, what do we have here? So,
On both multifamily buildings and development.
I think they should all just say buildings.
Okay.
And then we're doing 75 feet between the buildings.
Okay, so the first thing that I'm looking at, do we need to read these into the
Yeah.
minutes for a change?
Yep.
I make, and you want to do the definition one separately? As a separate item? Do they all have to be read in as separate items? How do you want to do this?
Let's see that I've got them all down first,
Okay.
okay? So table of dimensions, I have a change to 75 feet between buildings. And development,
What was that?
the mouse.
We went old school, we got an actual mouse.
Like the Flintstones.
Sweet.
What's the dimension of, okay. All right,
First thing I have is 167.3, if we're going sequentially.
3,
Definitions. Multifamily development would be a development of 3 or more dwelling units on a single lot of land under one ownership of not less than 10 acres in size in accordance with section 167.12a.
so we're going with 3 or more?
That's what it was originally. So the only change is adding in accordance with section 167.12a. So we're just defining the 10 acres and referring back to the multifamily subsection.
And that's the, we're on section 3.
Section 3, 167.
This one.
No, that's 4. So the only thing, adding that terminology.
Did we have that in here or no? No?
Oh, we were just looking at it
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
I think we just
So what did we
that there.
change?
So we're just adding in accordance with section 167.12a. So it just refers you to the section that talks about all the other dimensional requirements.
Okay, 167.3.
Definition.
Oh, we changed dwellings too, huh?
Correct.
So there's two under that.
And I think both of those could be one article, right? If you want to put it out that way.
And you can send me those?
I will send you this whole thing.
Okay. Multifamily. In accordance.
With 167-12A.
Okay.
And then changing the definition of multifamily dwelling to read, a building intended and designed to be occupied by more than two families living independently in separate units, period.
So the only thing we changed is the one,
1 to
1 to 2.
And then that last sentence about rooms for cooking facilities,
Okay.
we just took out.
All right.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
Yeah, we can make a motion on that.
Make a motion to revise the language for clarification for multifamily development as well as multifamily dwelling. Do you want me to describe what those changes are?
As written.
As written.
The valley definitions.
Definitions, yeah.
Okay. Amy, second.
I'll second it, sorry.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay. What do we have next?
AR, enumeration of districts, 167-4. A. Oh, not a change, sorry.
Okay.
I still had it in yellow.
Okay.
So 167-7, D2. Multifamily development use is allowable, so adding use is.
Okay.
Okay, so there's D2 and D2B.
D2, correct, and D2B.
What was D2B?
D2B is adding the allowance for having the secured interest in the purchase rights. So changing language to read from, the complete parcel must be under the ownership of the developer before a special permit is granted. Changing that definition to, the complete parcel must be under the ownership of the developer or evidence of secured interest in the purchase rights of the included parcels must be provided before a special permit is granted.
Okay, I have a motion.
Motion for 167-7 as.
Is there a second?
Oh, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All in?
Aye. Sorry. I'm reading.
Okay. Then we go
My bad.
to 16710
Yep.
Yep.
B.
B.
B. Changing the definition from a dwelling, or I make a motion to change the definition of 16710B of general density regulations from a dwelling, building, or any structure hereafter constructed or altered in any district shall not be located on a lot having less than the minimum requirements, comma, and no more than one dwelling shall be built upon any single lot except as herein provided. Changing that definition to a dwelling, building, or any structure hereafter constructed or altered in any district shall not be located on a lot having less than the minimum requirements, period. No more than one dwelling shall be built upon any single lot except as hereinafter provided, period. Each building must be constructed on an individual lot for multifamily developments in accordance with section 167-12A.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, and then all of 167-12A 1 through
7. Do you say 7 or do you say 6?
I guess 7, yeah. And
What is it,
7
6?
bumps down 8. Does it bump down more than that? Yeah, 7 bumps down 8 too. Yeah.
We gotta
So all
change
the whole
numbers
section. Yeah, the whole section. Do you want me to read the changes?
too. Please.
Okay, do I have to read the original or can I just read the
No,
flat version?
just read the,
Okay. I make a motion
So-
to,
before we get started, so we're gonna do 167-12A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6. Add 7, making 7 8.
6 and 7.
Right?
And then making,
7, 8, just renumbering current number 7 to number 8.
okay, sorry.
Make a motion to revise section 167-12, density regulations for specific uses. A, multifamily development, to read as follows. 1. The number of units in a multifamily development shall not exceed the number of contiguous upland acres in the parcel on which they are to be built as defined by section 167-10N. 2. Percolation testing shall be performed and witnessed by the Board of Health in accordance with 310 CMR 15, parentheses, Title 5, demonstrating that proposed areas for primary and reserve sanitary sewer leaching fields are suitable for development. 3. The minimum parcel size for a multifamily development shall be 10 acres with 110 feet of frontage prior to development. Each lot containing a multifamily building shall have a minimum of 40,000 square feet in area in accordance with 167-10M and 150 feet of frontage. 4. No building shall have any more than 2 1/2 stories which contain any amount of living space. This limitation will be enforced by a covenant with the purchaser of each unit. 5. The minimum yard shall be 75 feet. The minimum front yard shall be 75 feet. The minimum rear yard shall be 100 feet. And a minimum of 75 feet shall be provided between any two buildings. A minimum 30-foot undisturbed vegetated buffer free of parking or any structures shall be provided between the development and adjacent properties. Any changes in its natural state shall require approval by the planning board as part of the site plan review under section 167-28. 6. Minimum residential floor area. No multifamily housing, whether condominium or rental, shall be erected, reconstructed, remodeled, or altered so that the dwelling unit contains less than 750 square feet of living space, excluding areas reserved for parking or garages. 7. The stormwater management system shall be designed in accordance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Handbook and shall meet the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Standards as defined in 310 CMR 10.05 6K. 8. Fire protection in condominium developments. Language unchanged.
Just changing the number.
Yep.
Okay, I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, what do we have next? Is that it? Or did we want to add the caveat to the site plan review to include multifamily developments?
Yeah.
So that is 167.28.
Yep.
Okay, I make a motion to change section 167.28 site plan requirements to include multifamily development as one of the uses subject to site plan review.
Okay, a motion is a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
Aye. Okay.
alright, the end. Alright,
Table of density.
yep.
Oh, right.
Correct. I almost had you there on the camera. Make a motion to change the table of dimensional and density regulations for the town of Halifax, footnotes 1, 2, and 3, to read as follows. Footnote 1, the minimum front yard dimension shall be 75 feet for multifamily buildings. Footnote 2, the minimum distance between buildings shall be 75 feet between multifamily buildings. And footnote 3, the minimum rear yard shall be 100 feet for multifamily buildings.
Okay. Have a motion as a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. That's all we did?
Alright, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wait a minute. I just want to make sure we get everything there. Oh, we have something else. No, did we change the dimension, I might have already got it, but I just want to make sure. Definition, was it?
We did change those.
We did.
The
We were just
dwelling.
doing two?
There's 2. We didn't change some of this other stuff. That's it, right? That's all I have.
I think so.
I went through everything one by one, so.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. Good work.
Thanks.
Thank
what I
you,
did.
Carlos.
That was good. That doesn't work.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's at 9:35.
6.